Hello again, I'm Joanna Barratt and we're working away through my book, Learning from Life. We're dealing with the Sermon on the Mount and we're up to the part now where Jesus is talking about covetousness in Matthew chapter 6. The Sermon on the Mount deals with two major problems in man. One is covetousness, the other is hypocrisy. Covetousness means not being content with what you have. The opposite of covetousness is contentment. Fulfilling our own desires can never make us content. Hypocrisy is the outward consequence of the inner problem of the heart, covetousness. In order to deal with our heart, our outer cover of hypocrisy has first to be exposed. Jesus gives us the essential key to knowing our heart. We might think it is impossible to probe the depths of our own heart, to know what is in it, and to find the motives. But Jesus says it's easy. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. That's verse 21, Matthew 6. But what is our treasure? Well, it's whatever we value, what we spend our time and money on, what we talk about, where our thoughts gravitate to when we have a moment to ourselves. Consider for a minute where our time, energy and money go. Now we know where our heart lies. It's as simple as that. Jesus tells us not to store treasures up on earth and not to trust in uncertain riches. We can't take it with us. Heavenly riches are just as real and material as earthly ones. Just as Jesus is worthy to receive power, riches, wisdom, strength, honour, glory and blessings, that's spoken about in Revelation 5, so we will receive real material, earthly riches when Jesus comes to reign on the earth in the millennium, if our savings account in heaven is well stocked up. Well, I'm sorry to have to shatter your illusions, but this is a problem every single one of us have in some measure. Some time back, I was intrigued to hear my two sons, Nathan, he was only aged 8 then, and Isaac aged 4, and they were deep in this conversation, and it was a real eye-opener. They'd just been colouring a picture for a Christmas competition running in a toy store, and they were requested to look through the store's catalogue and write down the 3 toys which they would like the most. If they won first prize, they'd receive £500 to spend in the store. Second prize, £200, and 5 runners-up would each receive £50. Nathan, he'd already made his selection and coloured his picture before Isaac had even been notified, so he explained what was required to his younger brother. They looked through the catalogue, and Nathan showed him the 3 items he thought Isaac ought to write down as his selection, and he did his best to make Isaac enthusiastic about them. Unfortunately, Isaac was making quite a rumpus, so I stepped in to find out what was happening. My boys, they were crazy about action men. Not that they knew what action men were supposed to do, but they both had very good imaginations. And Isaac was stipulating that he wanted the action men figures, not the baby toys that Nathan had been trying to get him interested in. I then asked Nathan what he had selected, and I was very surprised to note that he had wanted a PlayStation with an action man game, which he had covered up and not even let Isaac see. Both children were certain that one would win the first prize and the other would win the second prize, so they would have £700 to spend in the shop. Well, Nathan had been worried in case the items written down as selections were things that you automatically received if you won, and he didn't want Isaac to make the same selection as himself, just in case Isaac won the competition and he didn't. I found it quite amazing to see them almost fighting about something that neither of them had. And all they could think and talk about was how they were going to spend this prize money. I can't honestly remember a great deal about my childhood desires. All I seemed to be concerned about was earning my own money at the earliest age possible so that I could have my own place, run my own life and not be accountable to parents or teachers. I do remember though, Mum and Dad always being short of cash and having to make ends meet. Mum would often tell us what it was like during and just after the war, when everything was on ration. Butter and chocolate were as precious as gold and to be savoured with relish. I remember Mum once getting a box of chocolates for her birthday and hiding them under her pillow so that only she could eat them and she'd not be obliged to share them with the whole family. Her attitude, unfortunately, rubbed off on me. And even though I hadn't been through the war or a time of rationing, chocolate and luxury items like cakes were things not to be refused, but to be gorged on if they were offered, even if you were already full. As a child, I remember an incident on one of Mum's birthdays. I'd bought her a box of chocolates, which I knew would please her. It was like buying a box of treasure as far as I was concerned, and I couldn't keep my hands off them. An advert was running on the TV at that time which showed a woman receiving this box of chocolates from her fiancé. And when she opened the box, she found a pair of diamond earrings substituted for a couple of the chocolates which had been taken out. Well, I'd seen it done, so I thought I'd do the same with a string of beads. I removed and ate a whole row of the chocolates to put my string of beads in its place. But I just couldn't stop there, and before I knew it, the whole box was finished. I wrapped the beads up in some paper and I gave these to Mum without any pangs of conscience, because I was still relishing the taste of these chocolates in my mouth. Well, poor Mum, at the age of 70, she found that she was diabetic and she wasn't supposed to eat anything which contained sugar, but she just couldn't resist. And she'd eat 5 or 6 cakes at a function without batting an eyelid. The stodgier, the better. And she'd cope with the consequences later. She'd just take some pills. Well, I suffered with the same problem. Not that I was diabetic, but even on my strictest of diets, my resolve would crumble if I was either at a function or someone else's house, and I would make sure that I sampled all the confectionery. Even if it meant not having the main course, I'd make sure that there was plenty of room in my stomach for dessert. For some reason, I couldn't bear to see other people indulging in the goodies and not be able to participate myself. I felt really deprived. You know, when I look back, I can see that we were actually a family of grabbers. We'd carved out a way of life for ourselves where we didn't want anyone else to get what we could grab first, whether we needed it or not, be it food, clothes, or anything else that was being given away. We were always first in the queue to take home leftovers from a function, and pushed and shoved to get the bargains at a jumble sale. The problem with this lifestyle is that you're totally unaware of how selfish you appear to everyone else, unless by some miracle your eyes are opened. Becoming a young woman helped me tremendously where the food was concerned, because I became conscious of my size and I was determined to get rid of the fat that had accumulated. Even I could see my exterior in the mirror and shop windows as I passed them. But other habits were harder to control, because I don't think we really see ourselves as others do. We justify so many of our actions and always have a very good reason for our thrift. Some years ago, Maurice and myself, we decided, well, God told us to sell our business. It was only a little business. We had this 4-track recording studio. But because it was now functioning as a business rather than the ministry that we'd initially intended, God told us that we should get rid of it. We put it up for sale and managed to free ourselves. Well, Maurice, who was more aware of his inner motives than I was, he said that he was forfeiting his half of the business and would hand it over to me so that I'd receive all the money from the sale. That sounded great to me, as I knew I was far more careful with the finances than he was. Or so I thought. From the first moment the money was placed into my bank account, I became paranoid that people were trying to take advantage of me. I was suspicious of everyone, and especially of my best friend and partner, Maurice. I knew he had bills, debts, and every mention he made of money was taken by me as a hint to fork out. I can't believe how evil my mind and heart is. And I can only say I'm grateful that God has ways of showing us what we really are like. Well, it was too much for me to handle, so I got rid of the money as quickly as possible. I didn't have the problem of the money burning a hole in my pocket, where I wanted to buy all my heart's desire. I was the type of person who was just so careful with it that I became miserly and closed my eyes and ears to the needs of others. Covetousness takes many forms, and it's so hard to detect in our own lives. For as I've already pointed out, we always have good reasons for the way we act and think. Proverbs says that the ways of men are always right in their own eyes. And it must have been a great shock to Simon the sorcerer, you know, the story in Acts chapter 8, to have his covetous and bitter heart exposed by Peter when he asked if he could buy the gift of the Holy Ghost so that he could bestow it on others in the way that the apostles were doing. And what about the prosperity gospel, which is so appealing and widely preached? Give to God and you'll receive 100-fold by exercising seed faith. Or the pastor who prays for more members so that he can teach them to tithe, which in turn will enable him to build the extension on his church. Surely these are examples of covetousness. But there are ways to covet which I believe are acceptable to God. When I was going through all my childhood difficulties, I frequently ran to the pastor for encouragement. He was the most influential person in my life, and God really and truly used him to help me. He gave me the opportunity to be the church secretary, which meant that he had regular contact with me for a number of hours each week. He didn't waste his opportunity, and he would talk and talk and talk to me about God, pouring out his heart, his love, his desire to serve Jesus. It impacted me so much that sometimes I thought my heart would burst. I desired with all my heart to have a relationship with God and Jesus like him. I watched him like a hawk, observing his lifestyle, analysing his words. Nothing he did was passed off as insignificant to me because I wanted to copy him. Paul said that the early Christians were to copy him as he himself copied Christ. What a pity that more ministers can't stand up to this scrutiny. But my pastor, God bless him, he glorified God in front of me, and he helped me to allow God to alter me. My covetous heart was channeled somewhat in the right direction at last. But there are so many other things to covet, like prophecy and running the race as though you alone are going to win the prize. Pray about it. God will open your eyes to seek after good things if you really do want to covetousness in your heart to be channeled in the right direction. God bless you.